everyone, and welcome to another edition of Beyond Vizcaya. My name is Odane Monestein, and I will be your host for today. If you don't already know, Beyond Vizcaya is a community storytelling series where we tell your stories. We tell the stories of those that grew up in Miami, that live in Miami, and just stories that affect our community as a whole. Now, this season, we focus on climate change and the natural environment, and we do have some very special guests with us today. But before we get into that, we just want to share a bit about today's threats that our Florida coast face, and we want to talk about, at least with our guests, some of the efforts that they engage in to help preserve these marine ecosystems. A couple of examples of marine ecosystems include coral reefs and mangroves. Here at Vizcaya, our mangrove shoreline continues to act as a natural barrier from the harsh effects of major storms, such as hurricanes. Here's how our Senior Manager of Horticulture, David Hardy, would describe it.
I don't think there are any plants that are, aside from the mangroves really, that would protect the property from flooding. The mangroves really are sort of filtered. They filter out the trash. Basically, they let the water in and they let the wind, the wind shear goes above them. So it protects the property somewhat. But other than the mangroves that can actually live in sea, salty water, we don't really have anything else that can be that strong. That's why the mangroves are so important to us.
All right, and now I want to go ahead and introduce our guests. We have with us a few people from a couple of places. We have Shannon Jones, who serves as Curator of Ecology and Environmental Restoration at the Philip and Patricia Frost Museum of Science. We also have Lauren Riley from the Frost Museum, who serves as the coordinator for MOVE. And MOVE stands for Museum Volunteers for the Environment, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And then we also have with us Dr. Michael Stedovan, who is an assistant scientist at Cooperative Institute for Marine and Atmospheric Studies. And from here, we'll say CMIS. The acronym, and that's a joint program between the University of Miami and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, also known as NOAA. And specifically, it's a part of NOAA's Atlantic, Oceanic, and Meteorological Laboratory. That was a mouthful, but we got through it.
So, happy to be here.
Yes, thank you all for being here. And thank you for the work that you do to help save our ecosystems, or at least help save them. All right, and we're going to talk a bit more about what's going on and how you all can help with some of these efforts. So I want to start with Shannon and Laura. I mentioned in our opening the fact that Florida's coasts are being threatened, and our producer actually got some great content after visiting you all with some of the work that you've been doing. I believe it was on a Saturday. You had an event going on in Virginia Key. And so I think we have a short video that we can share with our viewers as far as what was captured there.
Hey guys, I'm Chloe Jacobson, and I'm an intern with the Museum Volunteers for the Environment at Frost Science Museum. Today we're participating in the International Coastal Cleanup Day here in Miami-Dade County, and we're picking up trash on Virginia Key Beach. It's super important to keep our coastal environments clean for all the animals, all the wildlife, and for people to enjoy. The more we clean up, the more beautiful the environment will be, and the more success that animals and plants will have to survive. Volunteers make our whole program happen. We rely on the community to come to our events and participate, and we are so thankful for all of our volunteers.
All right, and so we just saw some of that great video, and we just kind of want to start by asking you, what's the mission behind MOVE? We'll start off with that. Either one of you can start.
Do you want to take it? I can take it.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so MOVE is a volunteer-based habitat restoration program, and we have sort of expanded into coastal resilience projects. So we engage with the community, we invite everyone out to come out, and participate in habitat restoration like native plantings or invasive species removal. We do beach cleanups, and we contribute to citizen science projects. So we have a number of initiatives that we like to contribute to. The video that we just watched was for International Coastal Cleanup, which is related to the citizen science project Clean Swell. So we invite the public out to collect really important data about our marine debris, and it's all submitted through this app that the Ocean Conservancy then analyzes all of the data and puts out reports to help our policymakers better manage our plastic pollution. So the idea is to engage with our community and have them contribute to science in a meaningful way and get involved with local stewardship and conservation efforts so they can feel more connected to their local spaces.
I actually want to talk a bit more about the citizen science aspect just because I think it's really interesting. But before we get into that, if someone were to just ask you, like, why is it important, this work that you do with Move, how would you respond to that?
There's so many reasons, I think, that we could probably list and continue to list. But for me, I think the most important thing that Move can provide is an avenue for people to get involved and really see firsthand what's going on our coastlines. I'm sure that people listening today hear about it, but when you can come out and watch a space filled with trash and really see it and then feel like you're taking ownership by removing it, there's a piece of connection that is created, and then hopefully builds this like love for the environment that hopefully one day continues to inspire them to help make changes.
This part about citizen science, was this always a part of Move from its conception? It was? Okay. And I just kind of want to ask, in your experience, have you seen repeat visitors? Like, how is that working out?
Yeah, definitely. We recently started to track it a little bit more. We have some volunteers in the past 5 years that have come out, like 11. Now, actually, we took that data before, so probably like 15 times now, that just keep coming, and just once a month here and there are, out there planting or removing invasive species, and we get to know the individuals and they become friends. So it's a really great space of community.
I would say too, through citizen science, we have an app called iNaturalist, and we have a lot of repeat volunteers that contribute on this app, where you document wildlife by taking photos of them and you upload it. And we have a number of people that regularly post, and it's an online community, so you can go in and help all of your friends identify all the wildlife they found. So we get a number of people interacting there too, which is fun.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
And then what are some of the age groups involved?
All of them. Yeah, we have had 2-year-olds out there running around the beach, helping pick up trash, up to retirees that just like to do this in their spare time.
Do you also get groups that just want to come out and do some of this as well?
Yeah, absolutely. We have corporate groups can book a private event with us where they get like one-on-one treat or interactions and get this experience. We also have a lot of school groups that will come out for service hours. For the film we just watched for ICC, we had a club, a science club that just joined us for the day. So yeah, definitely.
Okay. And then in terms of some of the impacts that, I guess have been a result of all of this work, what are some notable ones that you can probably talk about?
Yeah, I think Virginia Key North Point, we've worked and partnered with both the county and the city in that space for a really long time, even before I started working at Frost Science. And seeing some of the before pictures where there was invasive Australian pine trees that go all the way up to the coastline. Mm-hmm. And then the city and county helped remove all that and had volunteers plant over 40,000 species of native dune species plants. And now we get to see that space and see what it's supposed to look like. So a great effect in that area specifically. And then we get to monitor it and care for it over time.
It's amazing. And we just talked about, some of the coasts, and I just kind of want to add you into the conversation now, Michael. So we want to highlight another ecosystem that actually works to protect our coast. And as mentioned earlier, Michael, I'm trying not to formalize it with Dr. Studevant since you said we can be informal and I could say Michael. All right, so My first question for you, before we get into some of the work that you do with CMAS, I mentioned earlier that one important function of coral reefs is their ability to protect our shorelines, and we have mentioned that in our open, but if not, everyone, coral reefs, they help to protect our shorelines. May you explain to us how that works?
Absolutely. So coral reefs are really our first line of defense. They provide a physical barrier to help dissipate storm energy. So typically corals form these fringing structures along the coastline, and Florida's no exception. We have the third largest barrier reef on the planet. And so that runs offshore. It can be a couple miles offshore, or it can be 300 feet from shore, depending on where you are along the coast. And it's comprised of large coral colonies that form a calcium carbonate structure, the same material that is on the ground all around us. It's rock.
Right.
And when a storm approaches, all of the storm surge and the wave energy hits those coral colonies and breaks apart. It just provides, it's like adding a wall in front of the coastline. And if we didn't have that, that means that full wave energy would be hitting our shorelines, taking away our beaches, our beachfront properties and everything. So coral reefs really provide that first line of defense.
And some of the threats that I've read about to coral reefs that are facing today include pollution, some unsustainable fishing practices, disease, climate change, the list goes on. Can you tell us about some of the work that you do at CMAS? Sure. And how that helps to maybe resolve some of those issues?
Yes. So coral reefs seem to be dying slowly from 1,000 cuts. That's the way that we look at it. And so we, at AOML and at the University of Miami, we try and directly address these issues, whether it's water quality or disease or ocean acidification. And so our group is really diverse in that we bring a whole different types of solution-driven research to be able to address these problems. So we run a wet lab where we can simulate things like climate change. We can simulate ocean acidification and thermal stress. We also do field work where we monitor coral reefs through time to see whether or not they're growing, putting down additional skeleton and moving up rather than dissipating and dissolving. We collaborate with restoration groups to enhance the way that we use technology to understand how corals will survive. So finding out ways that we can identify the best genotypes or individuals of corals that will be able to survive climate change in the future. And so we do all of this all at once to see if we can address any problem that we can.
And of those problems, again, in reading about some of what you do, one of the main issues is coral disease. Am I correct? Yeah.
Unfortunately, yes. We are currently experiencing the worst coral disease outbreak ever recorded. It's called stony coral tissue loss disease. It was first observed off of Miami, in fact, in 2014, and is now spread throughout the entirety of the Caribbean. And so this disease has killed millions of corals. We've never seen any kind of destruction on this scale before. And then on top of that, we have an extremely hot summer like we did a month ago, leading to coral bleaching. So it's really a 1-2 punch that is knocking corals back so that they have no chance to recover.
And we've shared with our producers some amazing photos and some of the work that you all do. And our producer, Mark, was able to make some selections that we will share with you all as Michael explains what it is that we're looking at. So I'll give them some time to pull that up, and you can let us know what it is that we're looking at.
Of course.
So you have a better idea.
Now we're swimming over a coral reef off of Miami. This is most likely Emerald Reef or Rainbow Reef,
Okay.
2 of our long-term monitoring sites, where we've been looking at how the coral community has changed over time. And we've seen a lot of species becoming rare, if not locally extinct, due to stony coral tissue loss disease. We've seen hurricanes like Hurricane Ian last year that, even though it didn't hit Miami, it caused destruction because corals were toppled over. We had a coral head this large get knocked over and then moved 30 feet across the bottom. Somehow it's still alive, but it's just testament to just how much our coral reefs are handling right now.
Amazing. And I think we have a few more that we can go to.
Okay. So right now, we can see a scuba diver who is swimming with a camera rig. So these cameras are shooting continuously, and what they're doing is just swimming what we call a lawnmower pattern. So going back and forth across a single spot on the bottom. And then we take all of those photos and we stitch them together into a 3D mosaic of the bottom. So this allows us to capture a snapshot of time where we can identify what corals are where. And then if we do this over time, we can see how that community has changed.
I guess citizen science is coming into my mind, doing this work and then going back and just, seeing the effects of it and the improvement. So some correlation there. Awesome. And I think we have a couple more.
It is a bit hard to see the screen here.
Okay. It looks like maybe a diver.
Yep.
And with some tools.
Okay. So one of the ways that we can better understand coral health is to learn how they are responding to their environment. So during a stressful period, we can go out, take a small tissue sample, and we can use molecular technologies to be able to understand how that coral is responding. So we look at its gene expression, or we can look at its genotype to see how related it is to other individuals in the population.
Okay. Thanks for sharing that. And okay, we have our next image that's up there. Right
Okay,
now.
so this is a Pseudodiploria clivosa colony, or the knobby brain coral. This coral is actually just a couple miles from here in the port of Miami. So this coral is surviving on what's called riprap. It's a type of loose boulders that are used to stabilize shorelines. And these corals are surviving and thriving in a foot of water, just being constantly inundated by ultraviolet light and trash and sediments, fresh water, everything. And the corals are doing exceptionally well. So one of our big projects is to try and figure out how these urban corals, as we're calling them, are able to survive and how we can use that understanding of their physiology to better prepare corals for the future. Because these corals are already experiencing climate change in our backyard.
Mm-hmm. And they're still surviving. Also like the name of it, knobby brain. Is that what
The knobby brain coral,
okay.
Yes.
Cool. And do we have one more that we can share? Oh, that was everything. Okay, thanks for that. And then now I have questions that anyone can actually answer at this point. All right, so first question is, talked a little bit about it with Move, but we could always add more. How do you incorporate educating people on what is going on and ways to become involved? That can also be with you. I think when I actually did some research with NOAA and the program that you're with, there was a mention of fellowships. Is that still a thing? So maybe we can start there.
Sure. So NOAA is really big on education. All of our data is publicly available. We want the general public to be able to access it, but we also feel very strongly that education is extremely important to our message. And so NOAA is really great about offering fellowship and internship programs from all over the country for students to be able to come and work at a NOAA lab. So for example, we hosted a student from Massachusetts this past summer, and she was working on these urban corals in our backyard. And she spent 3 months here and is now able to continue that project from Massachusetts. So she gets that rich experience to work with NOAA and learns a little bit about our valuable ecosystems.
That's really cool.
I can add that I was an intern at AOML at one point too. So it all
Small
comes
world.
full circle. I think I can echo that with Frost Science, and as a science museum, we consider it our duty and our responsibility to educate and be a conduit of science coming through and out into the public and the community. And so we do that through our Museum Volunteers for the Environment program. Of course, people come out and volunteer with us, but when individuals come to the museum, they can learn about all these threats and things that are going around in the world, and specifically here in South Florida. And so it's a really great space for education for just the guests. And then we have a plethora of amazing education programs for out in the community or just field trips in school. So it's pretty much our number one priority at Frost.
I bring my daughter to Frost, and she loves it. And
Great.
all the special exhits are her favorite. The mummies,
Yeah.
that was her favorite exhibit.
Sharks is coming soon in 2 weeks. So.
We're signed up to go.
Shameless
Can't
plug.
wait.
No, she'll love it.
All right. And if you could identify maybe some of your supporters that are pivotal to the kind of work that you're doing that impacts all of this change, whether that's funding, policy making, who are some of your supporters?
Yeah. So Move specifically is pretty much 100% grant and donation based. We spend a lot of time on grants. We have a really cool program that has been recently awarded from NOAA. So we get some funding from federal government. We get a lot of state funding, and then individual corporations and foundations. So National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, Wells Fargo Community Grant, Brightmark. I'm missing someone, I don't know. A lot of like corporations, just Surfing Evolution Foundation.
Okay.
So a lot of donations that way. And then obviously our biggest supporters are our volunteers because they donate their time and energy.
Right. Okay.
And for us, the voters are our most important stakeholders, because our voters are responsible for getting legislators into office who believe strongly that we need to protect our marine environments.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result, we get better budgets for NOAA or more resources to be able to interact with other local groups, because NOAA can only do so much as a federal institute, but we need to collaborate with universities and volunteer groups and nonprofits to really be able to translate that science into action.
Right. Okay. And then on the other side, what are some challenges you continue to face? Just those things that are just those annoying, may get in the way. What would you say those things are?
We already talked about funding, definitely.
Same answer.
I would say that.
Okay.
Climate change.
And then heat. Yeah, I think for both of us, we were talking in the parking lot before this. This summer specifically affected the corals, as mentioned, but also just the experiences for the volunteers, the safety for the volunteers, having them out in the heat. Is it too hot for them to do the work?
Understood. All right. And we do have a couple of questions from the audience that we can hear and see if we can get them an answer. So we're going to go ahead and see if we can get that first question up.
Hi. I've heard a whole lot about coral bleaching, and that really unprecedented number of coral have been bleached by warming oceans. But I've also heard that this year's annual spawn went better than expected. And I just wonder, what are your thoughts? How are you feeling in terms of optimism, and are you learning anything new? We're in unprecedented times. Where are you right now relative to our corals?
It is true. This year has been really challenging because coming off of 9 years of disease, we go into a thermal stress event that not only was extremely severe, but also happened a month earlier than expected. And it happened at a really critical time when corals are getting ready to spawn, which is their annual reproductive cycle. And while there have been some reports that the spawn was better than expected, I'd say that we're setting a pretty low bar because we knew corals that are experiencing bleaching are immunocompromised, and so they generally cannot put all of their resources towards reproduction. And so I think it turned out a little bit better than expectations, but it still wasn't ideal. And so it's tough right now to stay positive during it, but what I think is the best part is the people. The people that we work with that stay motivated despite all of the bad news that we're constantly experiencing. And so it ultimately all comes down to the team and our ability to keep going. And we'll keep going no matter what. If the government shuts down, we'll continue to be here, and we'll pick it up when we get back into the office.
Good to know that you're out there fighting and You're doing a great job at it. Thank you.
Thanks. I hate to sound dramatic about it, but that's what it feels like now. It's just one thing after another.
I hear you. All right, and we have one more question we can go to.
How can locals support the protection of coral and coastal ecosystems with citizen science?
I feel like y'all should take that.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of fantastic ways. I would say, at least through Move, we have a couple ways that we like to focus on. One of them is iNaturalist, so you can get out there and you can take photos of all the wildlife that's around you. And all that information is geotagged, it's time tagged, and it's uploaded to a global database. And that database is used by researchers all over the world who are tracking information like species biogeography, like where animals and plants are moving, where they are, and like where they live and how they're responding to different environmental factors. So they're tracking them as our climates change. And that information is just really critical to the research and management of our ecosystems. So iNaturalist is a really awesome way. Another one, which we talked about a little bit earlier, is the International Coastal Cleanup and CleanSwell is getting out there. There's Marine Debris Tracker as well. There's a handful of apps where you can catalog and track marine debris as you pick it up. And that information similarly goes to a global database that's used by researchers and policymakers to put out reports and better manage our plastic pollutions. So those are two really great options. But there's many, many more. So I could go on forever, but I won't.
Very
If
valuable.
I could add one thing, it would be to vote.
And yes.
The most important thing
Not
that
citizen
any of us
science,
can
but
do.
yes, definitely vote.
All right, so lots of great information and very thoughtful questions. And not sure if there were any more that came in during the live stream. No? Okay. Well, if any questions do come to mind for you, please feel free to enter them into the chat even after this live stream is over, and we will definitely do what we can to get those answers to you. And so we're pretty much wrapped up, and I just want to thank you all for being here and for engaging in this conversation with us, and for all of the work you do. Again, it's I know it's not easy. You mentioned some of the heat. You mentioned some of the challenges that come along with doing this work just from different entities. So thank you for that, and also for our viewers that are here, that are interested, that are asking questions, that want to know. And for your volunteers that, like you said, are some of your biggest supporters. And so, like we said, we want you to continue to support us at beyondvizcaya.org, where we continue to share information pertaining to what's going on in Miami, all the different things affecting us as a community. And this actually wraps up our second season of Beyond Vizcaya, but we are continuing to produce content online. At the end of this episode, you can definitely get a preview, a look at some content that we have that specifically highlights, I believe, hurricane technology. So I will tell you right now what that is. A look inside hurricane forecasting technology. So you can go ahead and take a look at that. And we will see you next time. Thank you.